filmmaker Yolande Zauberman. I'm very, very pleased that she's here with us, and that we get to talk to her a little bit about, particularly about your documentary work, but I'm hoping we can talk a little bit more as well with your other artistic practices and how that dovetails. So we have some clips to show of her previous work, as well as some clips from her latest documentary called M, which is playing in the master strand of the IDFA program this year. And just out of curiosity, how many people have seen M? Okay, just a few, great. Okay, so we have some really nice clips from that. And M will be playing, will
tonight.
It be tonight at?
7
o'clock at Tuschinski.
I think 7 something, 7.
Yeah, okay.
Hello anyway.
So, oh, there we go, that was helpful.
No, but tonight also, I think.
Yeah. I want to start with your background, with your growing up years. In M, I was captivated because it's so rare to discover that you speak Yiddish, and that you were able to speak Yiddish to Menachem and communicate in that way. It's, I mean, for me as well, I grew up hearing the language, but never quite learning it properly. So I'm very curious as to your background and what eventually led you to an artistic life, and what eventually led you to documentary in particular.
I grew up quite, as a kid I was dreaming all the time, not very communicative. Very lonely. My grandmother used to speak Yiddish, and I loved my grandmother. So she taught me some words, of course, some sentences in Yiddish. I always believed that Yiddish is a language that if you know, I don't know, 20, 30 words, you can always speak it. Mm-hmm. It's a very affective language. So I love this language, but I don't like nostalgia. I'm even quite allergic to nostalgia. So the only way for me to play with this language was to make movies with this language. So I did a feature film. My first feature film was in Yiddish, and it was called Ivan and Abram. I shot it in Russia, and in fact in Ukraine and Belarus, with a lot of Russian, Polish actors and gypsies. And because I always think that dreams are the first movies that you can see in your life. And because I was dreaming so much, it was really, I was into that all the time. My brother told me that when I was 5 years old, one day he saw me in the street, and I took out my pants, my panties, and he was telling me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing cinema." So I don't know, maybe it's a sort of vocation, but for me, I never even thought of doing cinema. It was really a meeting. In fact, my first meeting with cinema was somebody called, in documentary is very important, called Moscow Bukolevi. Mm-hmm. And he made a movie about, when I met him, he did a beautiful movie called Terroriste à la retraite, which means retired terrorist. It was about the group during the Second World War, about of the group of foreigners in Paris who in fact defended Paris. They were the only one in Paris to defend Paris, and they would have been totally forgotten if the German did not do at the time something called the Red Poster, mm-hmm. where he has put the faces and the names of those people, saying, "Look who is defending you, all those foreigners." And so he made a movie on the survivors of this group, and most of them did not even get the French nationality. And because they were communist, and because the Communist Party did not want to show that the people inside the Communist Party who defended Paris were all foreigners and Jews. So he made a movie, and I remember we had to hide all the time because the Communist Party was coming to break the projections, and it was a time where they were quite powerful. So that was my first contact with cinema. And then I met Amos Gitaï, and he asked me to work with him. And for me, suddenly it was like it was like entering my dreams. I was looking to the sky, I was looking to the lights, I was looking to everything. It was just, and then one day I had this idea of, I like borders. And I had this idea of, because I saw few movies about South Africa, and I had this idea of being at the border between black and white people. And at the first time, I thought the movie would be called Let's Take a Walk on the White Side. And in fact, I went in South Africa, and the movie became something else. It was called Classified People. It was my first movie. And it was a love story between an old couple. And those people taught me something, because in every movie I do, because I was so much not alive as a kid, I'm always looking for answers to my questions in the movies. And they are real experiences. For me, a movie is always an experience, and I always hope that it's an experience also for the person who is watching it. And so in a certain way, I was asking the people I was filming, what is the possibility of freedom you have when you are when you are designated in a certain way. And we are all designated in a certain way by our families, by ourselves, by society, by school, by countries, by anything, by religion, by whatever you want. There's always, we are an addition of designations. So my question, without asking exactly this question, was what is the capacity of freedom we had? And they answered me in such a beautiful way that changed all my life, because this very old and loving couple, that he thought he was white, but then he was classified colored, and he was thrown out by his white family. And he fell in love with this colored woman, but he was already old when it happened. He was already 70 years old. And when I met him, he was 91, and they were together, very, very close couple. And in a certain way, they showed me that the only way to resist is intimacy, is the way you are in intimacy. And when I did this movie, it was not in fashion at all to think about intimacy in terms of politics. Politics were very dogmatic, the slogans, and they changed my life, because suddenly I could relate to politics through intimacy. Before that, I was always very cautious about politics. I mean, I never really believed in politics. But through intimacy, yes, because it's exactly the way you live that creates situation. And it was a beautiful story. And this movie, when I finished it, the movie was totally, most of my movie, I don't know why, out of focus, but the movie was out in, I don't know, something like 17 countries, and went directly on cinemas, which was quite strong experience. Yes. So that was my first meeting with documentary. It was something that was always very natural. It's only after certain questions suddenly that I grab a camera and lately the late movies, before it was big cameras, I always had a DP. But the last movies in terms of documentary, I did the image, which I love to do.
Which also creates an incredibly intimate experience between you and the subject. I'd like to show the audience some footage from Classified People, the movie that you're talking about in South Africa, which was your first documentary. So if we could play the clip, that would be great. With sound, hopefully. Do we have sound?
No, I'm gonna check.
Okay. We'll hopefully try to figure that out. This way in which you talk about, can we,
They're just
I'm
checking
sorry,
if
I'm
there's sound
confused.
in
I'm just,
any pieces.
Working on it.
okay, so just let me know. Sorry about that. So this way in which you encountered this couple, you also in some way were captivated also too by their dignity in these circumstances. And as we'll see in the certain clip that we showed, the visual language you're using in terms of place as well. There is that idea of the people in that place at that certain time, which you were alluding to beforehand. Was that, again, when you first started dealing with real people and their stories, I mean, was there some sense of, besides your questions, the questions of the position as the filmmaker as well? Receiving those stories?
First, there's something very important for me. There's a movie, a documentary movie called, I don't know, maybe people saw it, Memory of Justice by Marcel Ophuls. Memory of Justice is a movie, a very strong movie that was done after the trial of Nuremberg. And Ophuls went back 20 years after the trial, or 25 years after the trial, and filmed some people who were inside the trial. And suddenly we see that, for example, the gynecologist, the Nazi gynecologist that was accused of making experiences on women on the camps, 25 years later had a beautiful clientele. I mean,
a successful doctor.
Cabinet, I don't know.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And the young doctor that prepared the file against the gynecologist could never really work in Germany. It was a sort of blacklist in terms of... so suddenly you saw the reality of that. But the most striking for me was that we had a French representative at this trial, which was, that in France we all know, that was called Edgar Faure. And he said, okay, I was very young. We always knew him because he had something on the tongue. And he was, when I was very young, I went to the trial. I was representing the Général de Gaulle and France. And the first person came, the first victim from Auschwitz came, and it was so moving, it was so sad. And the second, it was so moving, it was so sad. The third, we began to be a bit bored. And then suddenly, there's this Goering or Goebbels, I never remember who he is interrogated, and the whole room is electricized. And I was thinking, no bullshit, no. It's always the same person who is the star of the show.
Right.
And I decided that I will never portray a victim as a victim. For me, it was really important to portray people as heroes. And it was really important because I think that to portray a victim as a victim is a way to put him in a box that is really very difficult to break. And it's quite unfair, because there's a lot of dimensions to every life. And so that was something that was my background when I began to do classified. So it's true that I was filming them as heroes.
Yeah.
I was looking at them like heroes. It was, I was always thinking, the team at the first, they thought always that I was sleeping because I was never saying cat. And and in fact, for me, I was thinking, if I can look at them like that, I think the audience can look at them, as much. And there was something of what they were expressing. I always believe that, okay, a good story is important, but what is much more important than a good story is the people. The people who incarnate the story are much more important than the story itself. The music of something is more important than what we say in a certain way.
Okay, I think we got everything to work. Yeah, so let's watch Classified People.
Have you got good health?
I've got fine health, man. Got wonderful health, man.
And nothing worries you?
Nothing worries. Nothing.
And you
is
eat
wrong
very
with
well?
me. And I eat well and I sleep.
And you sleep very well?
Yes, I sleep very well.
And you're very fortunate.
And I'm very lucky to be like that.
And you're very
Well-
lucky to have a wife to look after you.
Yes, well, that's quite right.
Huh?
That's right. That's what we got wives for, man. Isn't it? You got a wife to look after you, eh?
Yes.
That's why we pay her. How much do I pay you a month?
You pay me nothing.
I'll have to make that part ready. I'll give you some more money. Eh?
You give me some more money?
Some money.
I love that segment. It tells us everything, doesn't it? It's really beautiful. The next documentary just also concentrated on one man, and Salim, who you met, and this is where the labeling and the structuring of those labels and the way in which identity can be so amorphous, can be so, it's going to control you, but here's a man that decides to control all of these labels, these possible labels, and use that to be sort of in various places at various times. He has a magnificent story, and you shoot him. So you happened to be at the same place at the same time by accident. Did you know Salim beforehand?
Yeah, he's my husband.
He's your husband. Okay. So you knew him very well. Because I was going to say the intimacy with which you shot together. It's interesting because nowhere in the literature I read about this film did he say you were married. But the film is called A Jew in the Water. And it's based on this joke that he tells at the very beginning. Why this documentation that evening?
Okay, it's more, the thing is here, I had this very special small camera. I had to go and to film. And without telling me, he took out the battery of my camera and forgot it in Paris. And I got crazy. And we had a fight. It was a period where I had a lot of fights. And I looked at him and I said, no, you cannot do that to me. It must be that you want me to film you and nothing else. And there was a big critic in France called Serge Danet who used to say the stories of Uncle Salim because he's telling beautifully the stories. So we also politically we often had fights. So I told him, okay, I'm going to film you, and you're going to tell me everything you saw with your eyes in your encounters with the Palestinians, but with not one word of political comment. And he was speaking to me just to make me calm. And he was not believing at all that it was worthwhile to do that. And the movie is, you see, there's two periods in my life. There's a period where I did movies, not one after the other, because anyway I take a long time to make a movie, but it was one project after the other. And there was a sort of period of crisis for me, and so in fact everybody got interested in that movie. And this movie, it's one gros plan. How do you say gros plan?
It's one frame.
Nearly one frame, trembling like
yes,
that.
Yes, shaky camera.
Shaking like that.
Yeah.
And I
very,
thought,
very
everybody's
DIY.
going to kill me, to do it. And it was, and the camera was half broken, and everything, and the sound and everything. But each time we would show the movie in the festival, everybody was saying it's the best film of the festival. But it was technically so, and now this year there was a retrospective of all my movies in the Pompidou Center, in the Cinéma du Réel, and people, they were queuing for all those movies and they loved it. They really loved this one, I mean, and so, that's, intimacy became, since the beginning I believe in intimacy, but everything became more and more close to intimacy. And suddenly this man, who happened to be my man, was telling the story of the Palestinian people in a way, in a very intimate way, but his story was a much larger story.
Yeah.
And I love that when suddenly one person incarnates something much bigger That's what I'm looking for all the time. And suddenly when you find that, you know that you are going to be able to make the people. So what was interesting about him is that he was living in Lebanon, and he had where the religion was so important.
Yeah.
And his name could have been any religion. And he was always on the good side of it, which means that people always thought that he was their religion. So he was accepted everywhere. So he could look everywhere. And that made it so interesting. And I am always fascinated by this crossing the borders, to be able to see the other, to be able to have empathy with the other, especially if the other is supposed to be an enemy.
Right, right. But in fact is quite similar in a way, you know.
Because I believe that enemies are couples. I believe that enemies, you know, it's they look to each other. So they know each other in a way that it's like your neighbor, he knows you in a way that your friends don't know. And your enemy knows you in a way that other people don't know. It is something, and the bad sides and the good sides of enemy can be contagious from one to the other. And so I think it's really interesting to look to enemies as couples.
Yes.
And there was a Jew in the Water, and there was also this movie that I did called Would You Have Sex with an Arab, that I did in Israel, and I asked the Israeli Jews if they would you have sex with an Arab, and most of them never thought of it before I asked the question. But I asked also the reverse question to the Arab Israelis, like, would you have sex with an Israeli Jew? And in a certain way, it was maybe the movie of an appearance of the Arab Israeli as. Because before that, when I used to say to people that one Israeli out of 5 is an Arab, people would look at me like if I was a mythoman. And it was something that it was very difficult to accept and to integrate. And it was really interesting, because to desire somebody, you need to see him or her. And you need to see his face or her face. You need to. So the problem of desire may seem superficial, but it's quite deep.
Yes.
It's very deep.
Yes. We'll get to that in a minute in terms of the interviews as well. But I just also wanted to share with you a clip from A Jew in the Water, just so you can meet Salim, who's here.
En fait, j'ai fait un court séjour en prison, même pas 48 heures, à cause d'une histoire politique. C'était lié au mouvement étudiant, juste avant 68, à Berlin. Et pour affaiblir le mouvement, le pouvoir de l'époque avait trouvé malin d'arrêter 5 étudiants juifs proche du Parti communiste pour affaiblir le mouvement, pour le discréditer un peu. Parce que à l'époque, quand on disait juif, on disait plutôt sioniste, et donc soudain, il y en avait d'une autre catégorie. Du coup, on s'est retrouvés en prison. On nous emmenait dans une espèce de cachot où il y avait vraiment des ombres. Une vingtaine de personnes d'hommes dans un espace de 15 mètres carrés. C'était vraiment serré, ça pue, il n'y avait pas de fenêtre. Et on s'est assis, l'un le seul. Un des camarades qui avait été arrêté avec nous s'appelait Robert. Et donc il s'assied, à côté de lui il y a un Palestinien. Un homme, probablement droit commun, rien à voir. C'était, je crois, dans les locaux de la sûreté. Il y avait toutes sortes de gens différents, quoi. Et comme il n'y avait rien à faire, il a proposé un jeu. Le sol était de sable. Donc il a pris une brindille et il a fait comme ça il a quadrillé, comme ça. Et il a dit, c'est un bateau. Et sur cette rangée, la première, il y a 3, dont un juif. Et sur cette deuxième, il y en a 5, dont 2 juifs, un ici et un là. Et sur celle-là, etc., il dessinait tout le tableau, rangé par rangée, en disséminant des juifs, là, tout à fait par hasard. Et le jeu, c'était qu'il fallait trouver une règle de comptage, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, je le prends, c'est un juif, je le jette à la mer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, je le prends, c'est un juif, je le jette à la mer. 1, 2, 3, 2, etc. Et à la fin, il n'y avait plus d'un seul juif dans le bateau. Et ce palestinien, donc, dit à Robert, essaye à ton tour, et il lui donne la brindille. Et Robert, juif, dans cette prison, dit, je prends 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, je le sors, c'est jamais un juif. Il se gourait.
You know, there's even today this weird taboo around Jewishness, around even the word Jew. In Israel, outside of Israel, in Europe, in North America, it is like a strange divide, mostly because I think people don't know what Jewishness is precisely, and even the questions amongst Jews of identity, of, you know, always sort of being separate somehow, no matter what. The way in which you sort of dive into the culture in a very particular way is so fascinating, because the result of that is, for me, a Jew, is seeing other Jews who I assume to have certain qualities, and I learn so much. I mean, something is revealed to me that I never really have seen in cinema, in any kind of portrayal of Jews. I mean, this is very specific also to M, when the Hasidim or Haredim community, which is very, very closed and very self-protective, through Menachem, opens up to you. And it is the first time, what was such a revelation about this film for me, was it was the first time that I saw how much care and love and solicitousness they showed amongst themselves, how truthful they were, even to an outsider's camera. So your outsiderness, I think, was maybe your gender. I'm not sure. I mean, I'd like to talk about this to you here, because the film magically portrays things that are revealed only because there must have been enormous trust there and an enormous readiness, in a sense, to talk about these things. I don't know. There's a lot of ambiguity there that you play with. It's mostly filmed at night, you know? It's like in the cover of night, and identities are hidden. But yet there's an openness there that's really extraordinary.
I mean, there's a lot of questions in what you say. There's something about Judaism to open what you call Jewishness,
Yeah.
Jewishness to the word. Yeah, I like that. I like to do that, which means, you see, I don't know, I'll mix everything to give you a sort of answer. When I did a movie, my first feature movie that had to deal with Jewishness was not a documentary, was a feature film. And I did it because I had a dream one night. And in this dream, I saw things so beautiful that suddenly when I woke up, I thought, I come from a story of life, not from a story of death. Before death, there was life. And I wanted to explore that life before the destruction. And and you see, so I went to Poland, which was the country of my two parents. They were born in Poland, in the same city, in the same street, in Lublin. And people there, my father always told me that people never thought he was Jewish. My father was looking a bit like Vajda, like Vaida, you know? Mm-hmm. And I could see that on me because where Polish people always are so proud to know who is Jewish and who is not Jewish, they could never think I was Jewish. And they always thought that I was Polish, from a Polish origin, mm-hmm. And they were very open to me. And after that, I thought, oh, must have been something, because inside me, I began to drink, for example, vodka, because when I shot the movie, the Russian actors, they told me, if you don't drink vodka, you are not going to be able to direct a movie in Russia. And I was so good at that. I was like a Cossack, you know, and I could not believe it. And suddenly I found in myself things that were not belonging to my tradition or to my family. And I thought, because I'm looking very much like my father, I thought, if it would have been a love story between a Polish man and a grandma, for example, we always know about love stories. Mm. So it must not have been a love story. Maybe somebody, a grandma, there were so many rapes anyway in history, have been raped by a Polish, and I feel inside me both ways. And when I was looking for researching and looking to pictures in the villages, I was relating to some villages where had 90% of Jewish people living in the villages, and I was relating to those people as much as I was relating to the small kids, looking to them and being frightened by them, because they were told all their life that those people are eating Christian kids on Easter to take their blood, and so I could relate to both sides, you know, and feel it. And this is something quite strange, but that's the way I feel. I always feel both sides of a border, not always, but most of the time, mm-hmm. And on this movie, there was a set designer who was looking like Dostoevsky with a big beard, and he was an artist, and he never wanted anymore to work on cinema. But I convinced him with my poor Russian, and he did it. And then one day he told me, you know, I did this movie because I want to understand why you, the Jews, you drink the blood of Christian kids. Mm. And I was looking at him like, no, don't tell me that. And first time I laughed. The second time I could not laugh. I thought, I like this guy. I have to find an answer, because if not, we'll have to stop working together. So suddenly I tell him, you know, it's impossible, because in the matzah, where it was supposed to be the blood of the kids, we eat it with butter. And if there would be blood, it would not be kosher to mix blood and butter. And because he was religious Orthodox, he believed me. And he said, oh, yeah, you're right. So all that is bullshit. So I said, yes, it's bullshit.
Wow.
And then I thought, wow, I found such a good answer.
You did.
I called somebody in Paris and I said, excited, like, I found such a good answer to that thing. And this person who knew about all the history of all those ritual crimes that the Jews were accused of, told me, but the rabbis always said what you said, but nobody wanted to believe because people believe what they want to believe. They don't. People have a strange relation to truth. I mean, anyway, what is truth? And so it was really really something very strong. And in the movie, there's one scene that I really like, where you have a young guy, Polish guy, who wants to enter the Jewish house to see how it is, what those people do for Shabbat. And at this moment, I always had the impression that I was opening a bit the door for a lot of people that were putting their head to understand, because there are so many fantasies, so many, and I think it should be more open, because I like this tradition. I like the Jewish tradition. I think it's a beautiful one. It's a very philosophical one. It's a very ethical one. There's something that I really love about it. So that's why I want to open it in a certain way also. And even if I can relate to all sides of it. So that's the question of Jewishness. And the question of the night and I did it totally at night because I love the night. I love the nights in documentary. I think they are the most beautiful nights in cinema. I think that to make a beautiful night in a feature movie with a lot of equipment is really to arrive to the beauty of a night in a documentary, because of the poverty of the means, is really sometimes hard. Also, the night people wander. And if you are meeting the right persons that are wandering, it can be really fantastic. Also, we were shooting in a word, the Hasidic word, speaking about the last movie, that is alive day and night. It's not a bourgeois word. They are studying in the day, they are studying in the night. At 3 o'clock in the morning, you meet a family with kids, you don't know from where they're coming out. There is something of, somebody told me, in fact, and they're singing all the time, as you can see in the movie. The singing is very important. And somebody told me, it's normal that Israel is a country of the electronic music, of the trance, because it's coming from that trance also. It's true. Because those songs that the Hasidic people sing together, everybody knows those songs. You don't have to be religious to know those songs. It's something that is shared by everywhere. And so it is really, really a deep way. In France, the movie was in the cinema, the M. And the distributor, and it was I don't know, how do you say, coup de cœur, the beloved movie of the people who had cinemas, the exploitants. But they said we should not say the topic of the film, because the topic, nobody wants to go and see a movie on that topic, And I agreed. And so they said, okay, we should say it's a movie about how singing can save your life, which is also a way to say it. And because Menachem saved his life through singing.
Exactly, yeah.
And so I think I answered your questions.
Yeah, I'd like, so this isn't so theoretical. I'd love to show the clips. Let's play Would You Have Sex with an Arab? Because again, this is sort of nighttime Tel Aviv, and then just move into the first clip of M so we can meet Menachem and talk about that a little more.
Would you have sex with an Arab?
I had sex with an Arab, what do you mean? And not one. And why not? It is a question, but for me it's really not a question. I had sex with women from all religions and...
For most of the people here, you don't think there's...
Maybe. But we are speaking about my view, not their views. First of all, desire, I think also many Israelis might have desire. They would never maybe implement the desire. The Israelis are always so proud that it's one of the only occupation forces which had no cases of rapes. While any other occupation in the world, usually it goes also with rapes. The dehumanization of the Palestinians is so deep that most of the Israelis wouldn't touch a Palestinian woman because she's not one of them, she's not like them, she's hardly a human being. That's the problem.
So for you it was a problem that never was a problem?
Never was a problem.
Since the beginning?
Since the beginning. In the beginning I was also an average brainwashed Israeli. It took me some time to get out of it. Sure, in the beginning. In the beginning I would go past it as church and spit on the ground because Jesus is there, yeah? In the beginning we were all brainwashed, but one day you release yourself if you are intelligent enough.
Ich schicke dir jetzt darauf Eufen. Sie waren bis Mädels, wie ich bin gewesen 20 Jahre. Ich habe sehr stark lieb den Platz. Du hat mir noch gemacht der Brismile. Du hat mir noch gemacht Chalake. Du hat mir noch gemacht Bar Mitzvah. Du hat mir noch gemacht Chassene. Du hast sich auch gegett, aber du hast sich auch gerebt. Ich kann nicht jetzt darauf gehen. Ich kann nicht darauf gehen. Der Rapper ist auf und er kann noch darauf gehen. Ich schäme sich darauf gehen. Ich bin da.
Footage. Fantastic. This is Jewish cinema we don't really ever get to see. You know, this kind of cinematic representation, including this encounter where the you is, you know, who is he talking to? Is he talking to you? Is he talking to his rapist? Is he talking to the audience? There's this shifting, you know? And these conversations are endless, in fact. I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I was thinking of the first clip.
Yeah.
Okay, the first clip, it's quite personality.
Emotion, yeah.
His name is Gideon Levy. He's I think the biggest journalist in Israel. He's looked at by most of the Israelis like dangerous leftist. He's not really. What in Would You Have Sex with an Arab? What interested me the most were the young people, because he is very structured. when we finished to film him, he told me that's the best interview I ever had, because to speak about having sex, he was really happy. Usually he only speaks about, but even then, what I liked is, and it was the same thing in M, it was the relation to truth. Nobody tried to be cooler than they are. Nobody tried to say something that was unreal. They were really, everybody answered the question, which is quite amazing. I don't know if I would have answered the question, if somebody would have asked me the question. So there's something, what was so, for me, beautiful, and I think for the people, because the first time we showed Would You Have Sex with an Arab, it was in Venice Film Festival. And there was the international press, and everybody was thinking about their own enemy. The Greek people were thinking about the Turkish. The Turkish were thinking about the Kurd. The Kurd were thinking, it was like that because everybody has an enemy. Mm. And I loved that I never do movies to judge a situation. I don't like to judge, as you can feel in the movies. Mm-hmm. I do movies to reflect on us something. So we, for me, if it's not a process where I think that making a movie is a process between something you know already, something you don't know, and that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And and I was really so struck by the relation to truth that had all the youngsters that I was filming, and also certain things that were quite funny. The first guy that I asked the question, he had what was called a sexy club and a sex shop. A sexy bar, a sexy bar. Sexy bar is just a bar where you go and you are quite open if somebody, but it's nothing aggressive, nothing vulgar or nothing. But okay, we were in his bar in the afternoon. He had the sex shop underground. So I asked him, would you have sex with an Arab? And he said, no, my mother would not like it. And I said, why? Because your mother likes that you have a sex shop? And he began to laugh. But there was this relation, very true, very, and the same thing on the other side. And when we made M, I was struck by the same relation to truth, which was even bigger because it was more difficult to speak out, and the community and it was very particular because in this community that you saw where people were dancing like that, there is no theater, there is no TV, there is no newspaper, there's no theaters. So the only show is the synagogue, the street, and the Friday night table in a certain way, the Shabbat table. And so when somebody like Menachem comes and begin to sing in the street, it's for them like if Mick Jagger would come back to the village. Everybody came around. And the thing is that they were attracted by us in a certain way, and when people there begin to open themselves, they are open, with no limit. They are not they are not framed the way we are framed. There's not this thing. They don't know what is correct, not correct to say. They speak or they don't speak. And that is, when you are in front of that, it's like you can't believe it.
Yeah. And they understood the act of being documented, the act of the filming and understanding that.
It was very obvious.
Yeah.
Because we were, first I never filmed with a hidden camera.
No.
So the camera, and in case of M, the camera was like that.
Yeah.
It
But
was-
I mean, their experience of not being in contact, you know, with what kind of projection there might be, which is in a huge cinema with hundreds of people watching, and, you know, this is this way in which you feel they are very much aware, and that this is their opportunity to say those things that they otherwise probably wouldn't say. And there comes, if you would talk a little bit about the realization that Menachem, who you feel might even be someone who wants to shake things up, when in fact all he wants to do is to be reaccepted, but he's scared. And the men he encounters are just so loving and so willing to share their own experiences. Did that surprise you?
No.
It didn't surprise you, because it surprised me so much.
No, not me. And also because we entered the movie not exactly in the same way. Menachem was, of course, very nervous about all this community, and he was, like, you can see it in the movie, he's saying it, I hate them, and there's something. But with my eyes, and I believe, as you said, in body language more than in words, I could see that he was feeling so well in that community. In Tel Aviv, he was lost. He was a shadow. In his community, everything in his body was awake. And there was something very warm. And people would recognize that he's one of them. And so they took him more and more, and he was, and during the process of the movie, only at the end he told me, like it's in the movie, like, okay, you were right, I love them. And love is about that. I mean, you don't love perfect people, you love people even though there was something terrible. And this thing terrible happens everywhere. I don't excuse it at all. I think it's one of the biggest problems we have in our world, which is the rape of children. I think that a lot of the brutality that we experience in this world comes because we're coming from a world that was so many times raped, you know? And that in the silence, and I think that the big crime is the silence around it, because people are ashamed to speak about it. People are frightened to speak about it. And we are living in a better moment because people begin to speak about it. But I think we should be calm about it, because it's so much our story. It's so much the story of our world. And I think something has to be thought, a new ethic, a new... you know, Jacques Demy, the French director that I love so much, that he made a song that every kid in France, in every generation, sing in a movie that he did called Podam, which is a movie for kids, where the song is Mon enfant, my child. Mon enfant, we never marry a parent, you know, you will never marry your mother or father. And it's something that was really important for all the kids, like, you know, to understand that, okay, you can love your dad, he's already taken, you know, it's not for you. And and I think that something like that has to be written for the parents, not to touch the children. Something has to exist that since I began this movie, so many people came to me saying it's my story. Wow. I was abused when I was a child. It's so easy to abuse a child. Yeah. It's so easy, especially in a community where the children are raised to respect the older ones. If the older ones say, come to me, you know, to respect them. And so it is something that happened in every country, every religion. When you think about India, about Africa, about the wars, and when you think that 85%, I don't know from where they have those figures, but it's the official figures of the people who are rapers were raped.
Yeah.
You know? You think it's a sickness that has to be stopped by beginning to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Because if you talk about, and the main reason of Menachem to do it was not to become a raper. And in Israel, I had really what was very new for me is that they are obsessed by the idea that if you are raped, you can become a raper. Yeah. And they go on treatment if they are raped, and they try, you know, and it's something that is really like what they call the galgal, the vicious circle.
Vicious circle, yeah.
And so it is really something important. You were speaking about the night. For me, what is very important is to find the light in the darkness. I mean, those movies, I think, they are not heavy. There's something, even sometimes they're funny. There's something of a liberation, of a brightness. It's not about making the things of... When I was small, there was an old man that I used to love very much in my silence. I used to see him. I always saw something on his head, which was a nuage, a cloud of silver or gold, like that. I'd never understood. And 10 years ago only, I asked my parents, why did I see that? And my father told me it's strange, because his work was, he had a secret. He knew he was buying the poussière, comment on dit poussière? The dust of the jewelries. Mm-hmm. And he was taking out from the dust the gold or the silver that was still there, you know? And I love this image, you know, of the thing of, from the dust, you take something that is mixed to the dust, and which is really beautiful.
And beautiful, yeah.
And those people that we see, because in every situation, there's another side.
Yeah.
And the people that we see, even if they experience something really hard, there's this possibility of reinventing yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know?
I think we're out of time, but I think I'd like to play this last clip, which is a beautiful illustration of exactly what you're talking about. So if we could just run the last clip of M.
אתה יודע על מה אני מדבר?
אני יודע, אני לא מדבר אבל.
למה אתה לא מדבר?
וישבתי בכלא, באשמתי ולא באשמתי.
זאת אומרת, אז אתה במקרה, זה מפחיד.
במקרה נפלת עליי, אנסו אותי
ואתה המשכת את הגלגל.
המשכתי את הגלגל והאשימו אותי לפני שהמשכתי את הגלגל, ואחרי שהמשכתי...
מותר לי לחבק אותך?
לא.
כי אני לא מאשים אותך.
בסדר גמור, הבנתי, תודה.
אני לא מאשים אותך. עכשיו, אתה מדבר, אתה עברת את זה בישיבה.
לפני, של תלמוד תורה.
בתלמוד תורה, גם אני עברתי בתלמוד תורה. עכשיו, יכול להיות שעברנו את אותו אחד. אתה מכיר אחד...
הייתי גר בירושלים, לא בית שם.
לא, אוקיי, בירושלים. אז גילנתי סטנו ויסתי גילנתי.
לא, כל הנזים חיידורי.
איך גילנתי סטנו?
בסדר, אבל אנחנו רואים, יש הרבה, יש המון דברים, יש דברים שאני יודע, האנשים שעשו לי את זה היום מאושפזים.
מה זה מאושפזים?
טיפלתי בהם לבד.
טיפלת בהם לבד, למה?
למה? כי הלכתי למשטרה להתלונן, אמרו לי, אז תביא את הכתובת, תעודת זהות שלו. וכשהלכתי לרב...
אתה צריך לעשות את תעודת זהות שלו.
אז אני צעק עליי את כיוון השני.
מה זאת אומרת צעק עליך את כיוון השני?
כאילו, אתה לא מדבר, אתה לא מבייש להגיד כאלה דברים, אתה לא יודע, אתה לא פשוט לשם.
כן, זה קרה פעם.
באתי לבן אדם, אמרתי לו, או שאתה הולך לטיפול, תטפל בעצמך, היום אחרי שנהיה גדול, וזה קל, באתי לבן אדם, אמרתי לו, או שאתה הולך לטפל בעצמך עכשיו, ואני רוצה תעודה שהלכת לטפל באיזה מישהו, או שאני אטפל בך. ואלה שהלכו טיפלו, ואלה שלא הלכו, טיפלתי בהם.
באיזושהי שאלה. אבל זה הפחד הכי גדול היה לי כשהייתי ילד, תמיד אומרים לך גלגל.
אתה מרגיש שזה שחרר אותך?
רגע.
כשאני טיפלתי במוקד,
רגע, איציק, אני מאוד פחדתי מהגלגל הזה. אתה יודע, אתה לא יודע שאתה בתוך הגלגל. אתה לא בא ומתכנן, אתה אומר, אוקיי, אני עברתי את זה. זה במהלך החיים, כן? זה מאוד מעניין אותי, כי אתה נוגע ברבדי נפשי. ולא סתם נפגשנו, אנחנו מאמינים, אני גלאי בכין בשפר. כיכר, מה זאת אומרת, שאתה הרגשת לעשות את זה מתוך עשו לי, אני גם אעשה?
עשו לי, אני גם אעשה, כשעשו לי לא קרה כלום, שאני אעשה לא יקרה כלום, כל מיני...
הרגשת צער שעשית את זה?
אחרי זה הרגשתי למה עשיתי את זה, כן.
ובאותו זמן?
באותו זמן לא הרגשתי כלום.
עכשיו פה במקרה נפלת על הילד הלא נכון.
Thank you so much, Yolande. Thank you. Thank you for coming this afternoon.